as the situation on eastern Ladakh deteriorates to a very, very serious and difficult position now after the Chinese firing reported in the past 24 hours, including more attempts by the Chinese patrolling parties to probe into Indian-held areas. We are still in the middle of a present and worryingly disturbing situation on the eastern front. 5 Indian citizens from the border areas of Arunachal are still being held hostage by the Chinese. Another 24 hours have elapsed and we've heard nothing from the Chinese side officially or from their foreign ministry on the status, health and safety of these 5 Indian citizens, some of whom were working as army porters before they were kidnapped. There is now an SCO meeting for which our External Affairs Minister, Ambassador Jaishankar, will be heading. The Chinese FM will be there. We don't know whether India and China are going to hold FM level talks. In the current environment, they'll become very, very difficult. But we have to know about the fate of Indian citizens. These are civilians whose lives are potentially under threat, and they have families in Arunachal waiting and watching for India's response. Let me open up this conversation. Joining us on the broadcast, Sumit Peer, Professor Swaran Singh. I also have Professor Madhav Nalapat. Professor Nalapat, we know the things. We know that things on the eastern front are difficult at this point of time, sir. But these 5 Indians who are being held hostage, what should we be doing to ensure that they are handed back safely?
Well, I simply want to say that we should be examining all the possibilities, including the hopefully very remote possibility that they were doing some intelligent work for the Chinese. You recall in 1962, the Chinese had over the 1950s infiltrated heavily into Arunachal and Ladakh, and several individuals there were actually conveying information to them. Now, we do not know, these individuals are working with the armed forces, whether they have been abducted to get information from them,
or they've run,
or whether they've been brought to safety because there's a suspicion about their role. What is very clear, China will be having a very strong intelligence gathering capacity all along the border, and it's very important to have a counter capability to ensure that such elements are identified, isolated, and dealt with.
Okay, so
these people may be that, but I'm simply opening the possibility of that.
Okay, either way, Professor Swaran Singh, they need to be found. Either they're being held against their will because they are porters of the Indian army and they're being kidnapped so that they can be interrogated under duress on current movements as an intelligence operation, or worse, that they have the Chinese have tried to extricate them, in which case we would like to know where they are so that we can also then question them on what's taken place. Either way, they need to be found. How do we find them?
First of all, let me salute Professor Nalapat. I think he's a great example of Indian democracy when you have across party lines. Both from Congress and BJP leaders from the Northeast are talking about finding these 5 men, and we could have a senior journalist and a professor saying that they could even be people spying for Chinese. That's how widely we can sort of look at, when we analyze some of these realities on the ground. To me, this is fundamentally, a case of 5 Indian citizens, and to me, it's a humanitarian issue. It's unfortunate that the spokesperson of Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China, Zhao Liqian, when he was speaking on Monday, used that occasion to assert rights on what they call South Tibet. To link it to border is such myopic way of looking at these humanitarian issues. Right on Monday, a day before, I'm told India, returned to China a whole large flock of yaks and their calf. That they had sort of waylaid into the Indian side. Earlier, a couple of days back, Chinese returned an Indian person. Very different way of dealing with each other that we had seen all these years, including, right to the top, having informal summit meetings. Soldiers could sort of even celebrate occasions together, share sweets, to this 4 or 5 months of COVID-19 behavior of China, where everything is being used to really create further tensions on the border. So even issue like this, which should be seen as a humanitarian issue, is being used by them.
Well, I'll give you another great example, sir, of Indian democracy. If you're Chinese intelligence operating in Delhi, by putting on any other national television channel at the brink of war in Ladakh, you'd think the country is only interested in what drugs Sushant Singh Rajput or Riya Chakraborty were taking. She's been arrested by the NCB incidentally. This is happening, again I repeat, when we are on the brink of a very serious escalation that this generation has not seen. So that's also a great democracy. Sumit Peer, in this context, these 5 people have to be found one way or the other. Now, one is the Chinese hand them back, then we can find out what took place, or we go get them back. There is an SCO meeting taking place. How seriously should we address this matter?
I think, Rishabh, this is a very serious issue because you join the dots. We know the geopolitical situations which are happening between India and China. Now we see yesterday or day before yesterday, they replied in grey saying we don't know where their people are. Now the foreign ministry spokesperson comes and says, how can we kidnap our own citizens? And Arunachal is a part of our territory. So it is a full-fledged kidnapping planned by PLA because the 2 people who have managed to escape, the word here is escape. And they have reported that, yes, we have been kidnapped by PLA and these people have been associated with the Indian army. It's a new ploy of China wherein they are kidnapping civilians to start a new kind of a political extortion in the northeast. This is a very, very subtle message to us that we'll resort to these kind of tactics also. Because you see, Rishabh, the most important point is Z, along with his chosen flock of generals in the Western Theatre Commander flock. This status quo has blunted their image which they have created for 70 years. And we know Chinese, the sharpest weapon in their armada is this propaganda. And with the passing wheels of time, this propaganda is getting blunt. Now, even whether the CCP people must be questioning, what is your hold? You with your men are not able to deliver. What have you delivered? Your modernized PLA, you have spent billions of dollars. What are you able to deliver? You have been standing
okay,
on
but again, the problem is, Sumit, we were just having this conversation. Professor Nalapat, any logical, rational mind would tell you that the Japanese Navy is no pushover, the Taiwanese Air Force is no pushover, the Aussies are no pushover, the Americans are still the strongest Navy and Army in the world, the Indian Army or Indian Air Force or Indian Navy is certainly no pushover, fully capable of giving you more than a bloody nose. And yet they are adamant on every front. Rather than now toning down the rhetoric, they are increasing it. And as Professor Swaran Singh also mentioned, in trying to answer the question what happened to these 5, the solution was that no, this is South Tibet, it belongs to us. Now what kind of answer is that?
Well, Rishabh, I simply want to say that you're quite right, that these are all very powerful militaries. The Chinese are betting on what has happened so far, which is that they have never acted together. And secondly, I think they are wanting to create a situation in which as many countries as possible within this, within the ASEAN and within the states that are their neighbors and close to them, will come to an agreement that all right, we respect you as the tiger in the mountain, and we will be second fiddle to you. So we will not get involved in any activity to prevent you from becoming the tiger on the mountain. So they're working on that. I would only like to make a simple point. I would certainly admire the human rights considerations which Swaran is talking about. And I am very interested in human rights myself. I've been all my life defending human rights. I want to say that we must ensure that we open our mind to different kinds of hypotheses. And to my mind, it's a given that there will be a significant Chinese intelligence network operating in both Ladakh and Arunachal. And I presume that this is being identified and this is being rolled out, because we cannot just believe that just because an individual is, quote unquote, our citizen, he or she will not, for one reason or the other, go on to the other side. These people, again, these 2 people escaping. Well, Sumit, wonderful. I'm glad they've escaped. Escaping from the PLA is quite a feat. So I think they should give a seminar on how to escape from the PLA. My only point is, I am a skeptic because I've seen so many of these situations, and I do not want India to suffer because we are not taking seriously a threat which is there by pretending there's no threat.
Without a doubt, the intelligence threat is to be taken seriously. The same intelligence network would be operating in Delhi. Unfortunately, what is palpably obvious, they are not reporting back to high command. Sumit Peer, in this current context of ensuring that the Chinese do not open a front, where they are doing a similar strategy to what the Pakistanis do, which is to try to target civilians one way or the other. Now, one target could be that you want to recruit them to gather intelligence. We know with the Pulwama charge sheet exactly how successful the Pakistanis were and weren't in that. In terms of logistics, in terms of supply, in terms of getting the car, they did have collaborators. Or the other could be to simply hound them because they are working as porters or other service providers to the Indian Army. Either way, ensuring that this front does not get opened, what's our priority? How do we do it?
I think, Rishabh, the case here is different. In Pulwama, Pakistan did not abduct anybody and then brainwash them to work against India. Here it's a clear-cut case of abduction, and this is being reported from their village, and this is being confirmed by the local leaders, including the police. Now, when we have this abduction done, and incidentally, one more astonishing fact which is there, that these people are related to Indian Army. So what are you trying to communicate? You are trying to send us a message that your people in Northeast are vulnerable. So they are provoking India. It should be seen as a provocation by a combo of CCP and PLA, because the world is seeing them. They are not being effective in Ladakh. They have been able to, grant no ice there. They've been there for 45, 50 days. What has changed? We have stopped their wheels of aggression, and that is what they cannot live with. So they are taking a conflict to a newer dimension, wherein kidnapping of civilians for political extortion seems to be the new SOP of China. What we have to make sure that this SOP does not survive and this is dismantled, and we have all the options open. The tactical and the diplomats can decide what are the options. They're the best people on that, the military commanders, the diplomats, they can choose the options. But we should tell China, look, all our options are open. These kind of things cannot go unseen. You cannot take 5 of our people and pretend nothing has happened.
So either way, and if I can sit in the middle and ask that question to Professor Swaran Singh. Professor Swaran Singh, whether the Chinese are targeting Indian civilians because they are trying to recruit assets, or they are targeting Indian civilians because they are actually collaborating in terms of providing services to the Indian Army, or simply as a harassment tactic. Either way, what do we do to now put this to a stop?
I think it's a well-known fact that nations do hire and sort of incentivize other nations' citizens to do this kind of mischief of spying. So that's nothing new. What is new here is how Chinese are using this episode. That they are really showcasing a very strange behavior, as I said. So normal behavior would be, if there is a hotline message, the other side, normally will say, okay, we will look into it. That's not how the Chinese are behaving. Chinese are saying, we know nothing about them. Now, to believe that they know nothing about these 5 men when border is on such high alert, looks very, very well-calibrated strategy. They really want to ratchet it up and really use every occasion to turn that into occasion for territorial claims, which is how they are not looked at in terms of either humanitarian issue or issue of logistics, where they are going to say, okay, we will look for these men in next few days, we'll come back to you. But on Indian side as well, I think you see a whole lot of facts on the ground already, that they belong to a particular village, their families are known, people who have come back have told the story that they were taken away by PLA. So certain facts on the ground on the Indian side are very clear, and Indian side has been doing investigation for last 3 days and they have not found anything. So it substantiates the fact that some narrative about them being taken away by PLA is likely to be true.
Either way, it should be called out. Either way, if they have been taken by the Chinese for a debriefing, I think as a country we deserve to know, because it gives us information that this is a serious threat. And it is in that I completely agree with Professor Nalapat. It would be naive to think that the Chinese are not trying to recruit human intelligence assets. Of course, they are trying to recruit human intelligence assets wherever they can. It would be useful if the country knows. It is useful that we now know the 7 collaborators who have been arrested by the NIA in the Pulwama terror attack. It's useful that we know. We have issues in this country, that there will be people who defend them also. That's fair enough. It's a free country. But on all 3 fronts, harassment, recruitment or kidnapping, we need to know what happened. Now, there are various ways of handling this. Sumit Peer, when the June 15th incident took place, there was a lot of talk that after the incident, that there could have been a few Indian troops who had been kidnapped or were being held by the Chinese. The initial thrust was to make sure that they are returned safely, so to handle it quietly. We had one particular Indian pilot who was shot down chasing Pakistani F-16s, returned in 48 hours. To the best of our knowledge, if there was any Indian troop that had been taken by the Chinese on June 15th, they were also returned within 24 hours. In this case, it's now been 5 days. Should we be handling it quietly or should we be handling it very loudly?
I think, Rishabh, this is a new epitome which we have to handle very, very carefully, because now the people of Northeast are looking forward to us, are looking to us as a nation. Are we part of India or not? Is India equally concerned about a citizen of Delhi and a citizen of Northeast? Is Arunachal a part of India? Why does the Chinese spokesperson need to say, we will not kidnap our own citizens? What the hell does he mean by that? Has he lost his sense? Arunachal is a part of India. And how come a person living in Arunachal becomes his citizen? Where is Arunachal his land? It is a clear political ploy by Chinese, opening a new front, making our citizens vulnerable, making them come and feel in a no man's land, and challenging us in a way. Can the Union of India protect the citizens in Arunachal Pradesh or not? Because if 5 chaps can be kidnapped, tomorrow 5 more can be done. It's a new thing which is evolving, and it has to be taken very seriously. We have to use all the power and all the might and all the options at our command, and let Chinese be aware of it. I'm not saying military or anything. We have a hell lot of options, and we can use anything to make and ensure the security of our citizens.
Okay, well, we didn't take it seriously because it was a taboo subject about both intelligence and information gathering and an active collaboration in Jammu and Kashmir. We all know what happened even with Afzal Guru, Professor Nalapat. On either hypothesis, to now escalate this, what do we do to tell the picture to the country and to the world of what actually has happened? What do we do?
Well, I'd like to make one point very clear, that is, they could have been innocent people who have been kidnapped. They have been working closely with the military, and as you said, they have got military people in their family. So there will be a rich mine of information. So at the very least, these innocent people will now be probably subject to some kind of intensive briefing. And if that is the case, well, then that would be the situation. I am only saying we should not rule out the possibility. I wish NIA had discovered these collaborators before Pulwama happened and not after. It's very important to nip these things in the bud before they go into full-blown activity. I want to say one thing, Rishabh. We need to take this very seriously and very, very explicitly. These are our citizens. They are not citizens of People's Republic of China. They are from Indian territory. And we don't have to be apologetic about it. We don't need to say, well, we don't know, and pretend there's a dispute when there's no dispute. Or go and say, okay, we'll have a discussion, when frankly, there's no reason to have a discussion. I mean, we had a great discussion in Moscow, for example, which from the beginning was doomed to failure. And the only reason for that was we have a very gracious defense minister who will not say no to a request like that. So India showed its politeness, but I'm sure everybody realized it will be completely useless, and it was useless. We have to take this very seriously because these are our citizens. They are our proud citizens, and we have to not protect our citizens, and they have to be given
not
back.
Only,
not
only protect
there has
them,
to be a cost to it.
but to be seen to be protecting them regardless. And as you mentioned, a cost to it. General Asthana, it's been another 24 hours, sir. There is no information on China, on where these 5 people are. What do we now do?
Certainly, we have, I think, approached China, and the way the Chinese statement has come out, a few things are very clear. Apparently, they have done a dirty trick of trying to remind us that Arunachal is South Tibet or something like that. Now, we need to firstly remind them that Tibet may not stand recognized, and that policy can be overturned. Number 2, as far as we are concerned, Tibet is North Arunachal. Tibet is not part of China. Thirdly, as far as these people are concerned, they are our people. We have to certainly, under all circumstances, find out where they are. There has to be, in case they have been kidnapped, obviously there will be some more telltale signs. Those telltale signs must be brought out, and the dirty trick of China has to be exposed to rest of the world. Here is a case where there is an army which is basically not fighting professionally, but is fighting like street dogs and something like what we call it in Hindi, a gundagardi. Now, these street fighters are the fighters who fight like this. The professional armies don't do it like this. And the earlier also, when they on 15th night, the way they fought, it was again like a street fight. So, a army which has left all its ethics, calling itself to be People Liberation Army, I think it is a shame on People
Okay,
Liberation
so do we
Army.
escalate this?
This
Do
needs to
we
be called
escalate
out.
it? We have left it to a hotline call. Behind the scenes, what's going on, I don't know. What investigation has been concluded by the questioning the people in the village, interacting with them, we don't yet know. But beyond that, publicly, it's status quo. Another 24 hours is gone. It's a potential hostage crisis. How do we escalate this? We'll have a SCO meeting coming up in 2 days, General Asthana.
I think another 24 hours, we should be able to establish that it has been done by Chinese. Now, after that, irrespective of what they say, it will be something like a Kulbhushan Yadav's case, because he was also abducted from Iran. And subsequently, in case, let's say, if these people are brainwashed, as the professor was mentioning, then it may be a different call, and I think second Kulbhushan Yadav
Okay, it's a possibility that you can't rule out. Sumit, before I get into Swaran Singh again, Sumit Peer, that you first take people hostages, you bash them up, and then you start getting them to make claims against India. These things have happened in the past. We have to protect them from this, which means we have to get them back quickly before the Chinese can come up with these diabolical things.
I think, Rishabh, this is a new evolved SOP wherein civilian kidnappings have become the way of political extortion for Z and his bunch of guys who are not effective in the region. Now the problem is here that let it be Anantnag in Kashmir, Anandpur Sahib, Arunachal, or Andhra or Anand in Gujarat. All Indians hold the same weightage, and we cannot leave a man behind at any cost. It does not matter is he wearing uniform or not. Anybody who is an Indian citizen is as equal to any other Indian citizen. You're wearing a uniform or not wearing a uniform is not important. We have to communicate to them. This will be seen as a state-sponsored kidnapping and a bit of extortion on the behalf of CCP and PLA, and the 1.3 billion people of India are not going to take it lightly. It will be a people's movement against the People's Republic of India if you don't mend our ways.
Okay.
We have a professional army. If you have guts, go and handle them. Don't pick up our innocent citizens for the sake of what? If you don't have guts to fight, if your generals have fought 6 years back, that is your goddamn problem, not ours.
Okay, Professor Swaran Singh, the real and present risk, which has as a scenario been isolated by General Asthana, that suddenly 4 or 5 days later you start getting Chinese produced videos of these people, cropped and computed to the best possible ability of the PLA to start making some outrageous claims against India. This is a possibility that can't be ruled out.
I think that possibility has already been taken into account. That is why you have this hotline being used. Normally hotlines are not used for civilians moving around aimlessly. I understand they were thugging youth and perhaps also used as porters by army. So taking it to the level of army using hotline is fairly serious matter here. And I think Moscow is a good theatre to tomorrow see the two foreign ministers meeting possibly. And Moscow itself will be interested, even if India, China are not interested, to facilitate any such,
they're very keen.
break between these.
Yeah, they're very keen. You can well imagine that, the Moscow is elbowing in on this and saying, at least for the optics sake, while you are here in Moscow, hold the meeting. Same thing happened with Rajnath Singh. Professor Nalapat, quick last word on you before I come back and discuss Iran on the other side. Is given the firing incident, potential hostage taking incident, we are in a very, very serious situation. Is there a need for optics right now about sitting in Moscow and talking to each other?
Well, Rishabh, I think, talk is always welcome. Whether it will have any effect, I personally don't think so, but it's always welcome. But I would like to say, please don't forget the book which the Chinese are using, the PLA is using, is the book that has been written by Pakistan. And don't forget, for 70 years, at very low cost relatively to itself, compared to the cost we have been bearing. Pakistan has been conducting a proxy war against India. It's been using all kinds of tactics and strategies. And for 70 years, to be frank with you, we have not been able to stop it. We are talking about the Afghan war lasting for a long time with the United States. Well, the Pakistan's covert war with India is still going on. So the fact is, we have to look at that book also, and we have to work out tactics that are different from what we are doing with Pakistan to ensure that this doesn't take 70 years. It doesn't even take seven years. It takes a much shorter period to end this kind of prodding and poking. The Chinese are now copying the Pakistan rule book. We have to show that rule book is no longer effective against India.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.